Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Current Affairs Unfiltered. I'm your host, Paige Fullman. This week, we are taking it back to my home base, and we are interviewing a candidate from the 9th District, so that will make it the fourth and final candidate from the Illinois 9 race, which is shaping up to be one of the most expensive, competitive, and crowded races ever. But this one's a little bit extra special because this candidate is also my current state senator. This week, we are talking to State Senator Laura Fine, who is running in the 9th congressional race. Laura Fine is a state senator and former state representative from Glenview who began her career in public service after a devastating car accident left her family fighting a broken insurance system. A lifelong advocate for healthcare access, mental health services, and consumer protections, Laura has passed some of the toughest insurance reform laws in the country. She's running for Congress to continue that fight, standing up to special interests and delivering real results for Illinois families. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Laura. Laura, welcome to the show. It is so great to have you on.
Well, thank you so much for having me here. I appreciate it.
Of course, it is an honor to have my current state senator on the podcast.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's an honor to be the state senator for this community because I'm from this community. I was raised here, raised my family here. This is my hometown.
Right. So your story into politics really begins with a personal fight against the insurance industry after your husband's accident. How did that experience shape not only your views on healthcare, but also shape the kind of legislator that you then went on to become?
That is a great question. We have a saying in my family that sometimes gifts come in strange packaging. And I will tell you that my husband's accident is a gift that came in strange packaging because it really formed our lives. And because of what my family experienced and me not wanting any other family to go through what we went through, it gave me the incentive and strength that I needed to get things done. So a little bit about that story. It happened about 15 years ago when my husband was driving to work and he was hit head on by a truck and his arm was amputated at the scene. We were lucky he survived the accident, but what we learned about insurance was very discouraging and heartbreaking. The person who hit him was underinsured. This was before the Affordable Care Act was put in place. So we had individual health care policies, contacted the insurance company as soon as I knew what was going on. They gave me a contact to call at the company, thought we would be covered. And then after 5 weeks in the hospital and 8 surgeries in the hospital, my husband came home to try to figure out how am I going to live life with no left arm, chronic residual limb pain, and he could not go back to work. And then we started getting collection calls and unpaid bills. And I called the insurance company to say, I don't understand what's going on. And they refused to talk to me. We found out later through our lawyer that they were working to cancel our policy. So we had 2 young children at the time and about $600,000 in bills. And this sent my husband into a suicidal depression where we had to check him back into the hospital after trying to take his own life. And, insult upon injury before the Affordable Care Act, insurance didn't have to cover behavioral health care at the time. So we're like, just pile on more bills for us because who at this age in the game can afford these bills? I mean, this is medical bankruptcy. So I'm the type of person that when I get angry, I have to do something about it. And so what I decided to do was go back to insurance school. And I got licensed in insurance so I could start studying insurance law in the state of Illinois. And when I started digging into the statute, some of the things I learned were things that I knew needed to be changed. So, for example, when my husband had his accident, Illinois was one of the top states where insurance was canceling people's healthcare policies really when they needed it the most. We were one of the top states. Now, because of the legislation that I have passed over the past 13 years, we've really changed that in the state of Illinois. And now we're one of the most consumer-friendly states when it comes to healthcare. And, you asked the question of how did this change you? This made me a dog with a bone and wanted to make sure I can make positive changes for people who needed it.
Absolutely. There's so many people that forget And there's so many people my age that just didn't experience it, but there's so many people that just don't know, forget, whatever it is. What life was like before the Affordable Care Act? Your story is tragic in a way and a little bit abnormal, but there's so many people that have a similar story where they've been booted off their insurance for whatever reason. If you were a woman, your insurance didn't have to cover your birth control. You had a pre-existing condition if you were a
We
woman. Like,
were
people forget that.
pre-existing conditions.
Exactly. People forget what that life was like, and it's scary to hear that story and think like this is the world that a lot of people want to go back to, getting rid of Obamacare, the ACA, whatever you want to call it.
Absolutely. I mean, for us, we live in a community where our families are all here. Our community was so supportive. I mean, it took months and months and months of me finally telling my neighbors when I come home, you do not need to leave dinner on my doorstep. I can take it from here, because people were just so lovely. And even with all that love and support, we were crumbling. And I think about what happens to the family that doesn't have that kind of support. They're going to
Right.
try to start paying these bills off and go into bankruptcy. And it's devastating, because, like I said, you just can't prepare for that. And when the
Right.
Affordable Care Act was put in place, it eliminated many of the concerns that we had experienced. And then when I got to the General Assembly, I was able to take care through the state of Illinois, some of the other issues that arose.
Right. So Illinois now has some of the strongest consumer protection laws in the country, thanks in part to you. What lessons from that fight would you want to bring to Washington to make healthcare fairer for families?
Great question. First of all, you have to be in for the fight. Industry, they're tough. They will bully you, but you can't let them stop you. And I think that was my biggest incentive during this fight, because I knew how it felt. And people called me a dog with a bone when it comes to changing healthcare policy in the state of Illinois. And that's exactly what I want to bring to Washington. We see what's going on right now with the subsidies, with Medicaid, with people's concerns about Medicare. And these just aren't problems on paper. These are messing with people's lives, not only individual lives, but the whole domino effect of what it can do to our healthcare system. So
Right.
that's why I feel like right now we need somebody in this position running for Congress who understands how to make the changes that are going to positively impact people and put aside the negative.
Right. Well, and with healthcare being an issue that at this point we're recording this in late November of 2025, it's
Mhm.
healthcare is at the forefront of literally everybody's mind right now. Like, that is an issue that
Absolutely.
needs to be hammered home.
It absolutely does. And, even if you feel like, oh, maybe I get health care through my employer, I don't have to worry about this. You absolutely do have to worry about it. And part of the reason is because if we do not make the necessary changes to Medicaid, if we lose the subsidies for the Affordable Care Act exchange, what is going to happen is, we're expecting 70 to 90,000 people in Illinois to leave the private insurance market. The changes in Medicaid to impact our hospitals. So that's where the domino effect is going to start. We're going to see rural hospitals shutting down. We're already seeing hospitals in urban areas closing certain departments because they're not
Mhm.
moneymakers. I think just last week, one of the hospital groups announced they're closing all their maternity wards. Where's a woman going to go in order to
Right.
deliver a baby? We're also seeing other issues like venture capitalists purchasing hospitals, purchasing medical offices in different organizations. And we're losing the care in healthcare because it's all coming down to bottom line. So this is where it's going to impact absolutely everybody, and we need to have a voice.
Right. Absolutely. So as you've just went over, you have had a front row seat to how systems can either support or fail the people that they are meant to serve. What do you think makes a system truly work for families, and what makes it fall apart?
A system that truly works for families and individuals is centered on the well-being of that family or individual. Let's take a look at mental health, for example. So in the Illinois Senate, I chair the Mental and Behavioral Health Committee. And in Illinois, we've passed some of the most groundbreaking pieces of legislation on mental health care really throughout the country. Other states look at what we've done and try to emulate what we've done so they can come up to our level. So, for example, mental health parity. We have some of the strongest parity laws in the country, which means in Illinois, your mental health needs to be the same as your physical health. So your insurance has to cover your mental health the same as it would your physical health. This is so important because we have to stop treating mental health with a stigma. We have to treat it as healthcare. And this is something that we've been able to accomplish in Illinois. Something very interesting along those lines is we know we do not have enough mental health care providers. So what we've accomplished in Illinois is we formed something called the Behavioral Health Workforce Committee. And we are working to expand the number of people in the mental health field. So we have sort of behavioral health workforce hubs at University of Illinois Champaign and in Southern Illinois that encourages more people to go into the mental health fields. And it does so by not only offering the classes, but also offering things like possibly tuition reimbursement. So we can encourage more people to go into these fields because they are so desperately needed.
Right. So that seems like a system that Illinois has built up to work in the best possible way that it can be. What do you think is a good example of a system that is not working? I'm sure there are many, but what's your favorite?
Oh my gosh, where does my list begin? Yeah. You know, what I will say about Illinois state government is we're really trying to dig deep and to make sure things do work here. What I am seeing also is we're in a constant back and forth fight with the federal government because so many of the programs and policies we have in place are reliant upon the funding that is supposed to be supporting us by the federal government. So, for example, Medicaid dollars. You know, if we lose these Medicaid dollars, what is going to happen? And, you know, part of the Medicaid plan in the bill that passed that I won't call by the name that people call it by, because I don't think there's much very pretty about it, is every 6 months, you have to sort of re-register for your Medicaid. But what we forget is many people who are on Medicaid are disabled. They're seniors in nursing homes. They're people with severe mental health issues, and it's not such an easy thing. So people are going to appear at the hospital in the emergency room and not have insurance coverage and not realize that they lost their coverage. And so these are ways that we're kind of at loggerheads with the federal government because we're trying to make it easier for the people in the state of Illinois. And the policies coming down from the federal level are making it more and more challenging for us. And that's what, you know, is really frustrating and what needs to be changed. Losing the subsidies on the Affordable Care Act. In Illinois, I was able to pass legislation. It took me 10 years to pass. Like I said, I'm a dog with a bone. When I think it's the right thing to do, I do it.
Right.
And this gave our Department of Insurance something called rate review, I'm going to say with teeth. So what that means is now, starting in 2026, every time an insurance company files a policy with our Department of Insurance before it can go out for sale on the exchange, our department has the right to review that policy in an actuarial way and decide if they're charging too much for that policy, or even if they're not charging enough for that policy. And our department now has the right to refuse policies that are being overcharged for the consumer. So when we take the subsidies away, what we're saying is, okay, this is the price that your policy should cost, but you can't afford it without your subsidies. So that's why these subsidies are absolutely so important. But our department has the back of the people in the state of Illinois to make sure that it was done right.
Right. Absolutely. So you are running for the 9th Congressional District in Illinois. So
Mm,
let's
mm.
talk a little bit about your policies. We touched on this a little
Okay.
bit, but mental health access has been a major focus of your work in the Illinois state legislature.
Yeah.
What is the biggest challenge, in your opinion, that is still preventing people from getting the care they need, and what solutions can actually move the needle?
There are many roadblocks. One of the roadblocks is stigma. And we have incredible organizations out there like NAMI who have programs called Ending the Silence, where they'll go into a high school and have a young person do a presentation for the high schoolers, or I think they're even doing junior highs now, to talk about mental health and to take that stigma away and to let kids know it's okay not to be okay. And you can go talk to somebody about it. There is help out there for you. There's nothing wrong with you. You just need help. And if you get the proper help you need, then you can be put on the right path. One of the challenges we have is, again, we talked about how do we get enough people in the mental health workforce? Uh, One thing we can do at the federal level is replicate something that our Department of Mental Health has done in the state of Illinois. The most creative, groundbreaking program that they have put in place. It's called CRS, Community Resource Supports. And this program takes people who are in recovery and teaches them to be a mental health support system. So, for example, a couple of years ago, I did a subject matter hearing on this particular issue. And I'm telling you, when the person came to testify, there was not a dry eye in the room. Everybody was in tears because this young man came to testify and he talked about how he was from an abusive home, was in abusive foster care situations, ended up on the streets, became addicted to drugs, went to rehab a couple of times, and he always relapsed. And he felt like, I'm never going to make anything out of my life. And once when he was in rehab, somebody said to him, I know a program that I think you should apply for. I think you're going to be a success. And he said, there's no way, I've never been able to accomplish anything. And they told him about this program. Now, this program it's a partnership between the state of Illinois and some of our community colleges, is a 2-year program that teaches people who are in recovery to become recovery support specialists and work in places like a living room. And so this young man went through the program. He now has a permanent job in a living room, helping others. He's got housing, he's got an income, and he will be the first to tell you the reason he got through this program is because the program supports you throughout the entire. There was another man who said that he stopped coming to class and his teacher called him to say, why aren't you coming? And he's like, I can't get there. My car broke down. So the program paid to have his car fixed. And then he successfully completed the program. We now have hundreds of people going through this program. And I think the most creative piece of this is it's paid for through marijuana dollars. So, but now,
Right on.
exactly, if we're going to use it, we're going to use it properly. So, but now other states are looking to see what Illinois has accomplished because this is such an amazing program. And why isn't this being done nationally? This is a way to not only fill in the gaps in the workforce, but also to get people back on their feet so they can become taxpayers and have housing and a permanent job and really have a lot of positives in their life.
Right. I had Patrick Hanley on my podcast, who is, of course, running to take your now vacant Senate seat. And he said something about how the best ideas come from state legislatures and then go on to be implemented at the federal level. And while not a very profound thing to say, I hadn't thought about it too deeply. It's correct. Like it's so much easier to pass things at the state level and then bring them to the federal level. And that seems like such a fantastic idea to take to the federal level and to have everybody have access to those types of things, especially because a lot of addicts and people in recovery will go on to, even if it's not through that program, go on to work in fields that are helping people or in a job that is assisting those in recovery. Like, it seems like just a natural extension of what already occurs.
Absolutely. And many times people are more comfortable sharing their experience with somebody who might have the same lived experience. And
Right.
that's why this program is such a success. And I'm going to one up what Patrick said. Not only do the best ideas come from the state legislature, but sometimes they come from our constituents just by knocking on their doors and talking to them. I had this experience just a couple of years ago. I knocked on somebody's door, and to this day, she'll say, I don't know why I answered my door that day. And the reason is because that was the weekend that they had the memorial service for her son. And her experience was her son was in a private rehab facility and somehow overdosed in the facility. And the family was not notified for like 2 weeks. And when she told me that, I was just flabbergasted. I'm like, how could they not reach out to the family? So, like I said, this wasn't a state facility, this was a private facility. So I started working with the behavioral health associations, looking into Illinois law. And now we've changed the law. So now that will not happen to any other family. And the law is named after her son. So now a family must be notified within 24 hours that something like this has happened. But if I had not knocked on her door, I would not known that this is an issue. So it's really important to hear from the people that we represent to figure out what needs to be changed and what needs to be done.
Right. It's so funny because there's so many laws that I'm like, oh yeah, like obviously that should be a law. It's common sense. And then you go, well, I just passed it like a year ago. What? That should have been a law about 100 years ago. What do you mean?
Well, and I don't know if you would remember this or not, but people used to be able to smoke in restaurants.
Oh, my mom's a smoker. We talk about it all the time. I'm like, remember when you used to just like, I have vivid memories of being a kid and my mom sitting at a restaurant with my mom and dad and my mom being like, oh, I'm going to go to the bar and smoke. And I so vividly remember that New Year's Eve when it was banned. And now I think about it and I'm like, that's insane. Why were we ever, what was that? There was food around.
Right. Exactly. Or if you got on an airplane, the front was non-smoking, but the back was smoking, as if, the air wasn't going to pass through the rows.
Right.
But those are all things that were changed by law and through people's experience. And sometimes the things that we think are the most obvious are sometimes the hardest things to pass because there's always going to be opposition no matter what.
Right. So you've been a consistent advocate for affordable healthcare in Illinois, with ACA premiums becoming a major point of national debate, as we just talked about. How do you think we can protect and strengthen the Affordable Care Act so that working families are not priced out of coverage? Or do you think it's worth protecting and building it back up?
We could go two ways on this. We can protect the subsidies and build it back up while we're building the airplane to improve the system. Because it's not, in my opinion, it will cost too many lives to rip the rug out from everyone until we get something else in place.
Right.
So we really need to, this is what we've got right now. Let's build on this. Let's use this until we can look at, can we get a single payer system in place? Can we lower the age of Medicare? What are the other things that can be done? But until we get something else solidified, we can't take away what we have.
Right, absolutely. Well, on a national level, the conversation around healthcare is often hitting a wall between, we need to fix the system versus we need to knock it down and rebuild it completely from the ground up. Where do you fall in that debate? Is reform enough, or do we need to knock this down and rebuild it?
Again, I think we need to do both. I think, let's reform while we need to, while we can
Right.
get the other programs in place. Because we definitely need other programs, because I feel like right now in our country, healthcare seems to be a privilege and not a right, and that's wrong. Healthcare is a right. Healthcare is not a privilege. And I mean, it shouldn't be that much different than emergency response. So if my house is on fire, the fire department's coming. They're not
Right.
going to check my insurance first. They're going to come, they're going to put the fire out.
Right, exactly.
So why should this be any different for healthcare? But in the meantime, to get that in place, we have to make sure that we have enough providers. We can pay those providers enough, and we can stabilize our system.
Right.
And concerns that I also have that are stemming out of this bill when it comes to healthcare is they are limiting the federal loans you could take out to go to a professional school like medical school. And this is going to really impact people who are considering taking the plunge. It's expensive. How are you going to pay for it? Are you going to be forced to the private market? Because the dollar cost average just might not work out for you if you do that. And so there are just so many pieces to this puzzle that we have to fix and get a better program in play.
Right, absolutely. I know I asked that question, but I'm not even sure where I fall on that question. It's tough because there's Obamacare is incomplete. I don't think that's a very controversial statement to say. It did what it could do under the circumstances during which it was passed. There are clearly at this point some glaring flaws, but I do not think the solution is just to axe it and hope for the best and go back to the pre-ACA days. Like you just explained, the pre-ACA days were dark and abysmal. And if you're 18 right now, you wouldn't be on your parents' insurance. Back then, they used to boot you off at 18. It is a
Right.
privilege at this point that we get to stay on until 26. And I needed every day until I turned 26 to be on my mom's insurance. Like you can't just rip the rug out from people like that. Like, so it's, I don't know, that was a tough question in my own opinion.
No, and I think one thing the ACA was a benefit for was entrepreneurship, because many people are afraid to leave their jobs because their insurance is tied to their jobs. People were willing to take that plunge and take a chance, knowing that they could get affordable insurance on the private market and not have to stick at a job that maybe they don't like. And so we have to figure out, how do we continue to advance the positive and then change the negative?
Right, absolutely. So environmental policy can sometimes feel like a trade-off for some people. A trade-off between economic growth and sustainability. How do you approach that balance, especially for working families in manufacturing or industrial communities?
So in the General Assembly, in the Illinois Senate, I am the chair of the Green Caucus. I am also the chair of an organization called the Great Lakes Legislative Caucus, which is an organization made up of legislators from the Great Lakes states and the provinces in Canada that rely upon the Great Lakes. This is so important because our water is not only there for our drinking, but for our recreation and our economy. And so what's fabulous is we've got this binational group working together, sharing ideas of what can we do to protect this essential natural resource and help our economy at the same time. And so this is a thought process that I always bring into any of the legislation, environmental legislation that I pass in the state of Illinois. A really good example of this is during the last session, I passed a piece of legislation through the Illinois Senate that says that you can no longer sell single-use polystyrene packages in restaurants for like takeout food. But I was able to pass this because I worked with industry. I worked with the Manufacturers Association, the Retail Merchants Association, the Restaurant Association, and did it in such a way that we can't, like I said before, you can't just pull the rug out from under anybody.
Right.
It gives you a 5-year ramp. because what the restaurants were saying to us and what the Retail Merchants Association was saying to us was sometimes, people have years and years of stock of these containers. We don't want to just throw them away.
Right.
And we want to make sure that there is a cost-effective alternative so that it doesn't impact these restaurants and companies in a negative way. And so we decided that with the 5-year ramp, that would work. And so in order to make this balance, you really have to work with all the different organizations that are involved and bring everybody to the table. Because if you don't, you'll never be able to get it done.
Do you feel like there's a limit to that? Like, if you were passing say, I'm trying to think of like an urgent issue that would require urgent action, like gun reform. Do you still feel like you should work with all of the industries involved, such as, say, gun manufacturers or the so-called like evil parties in that debate? Or is that more reserved for issues where, it feels more appropriate to work with industries and things like that?
Now, here's the catch. I mean, it would be great if we could get all this legislation through and have the votes for it. But in Springfield, for example, we have a saying, it's called 30-61. We need to get 30 votes in the Senate, 60 votes in the House, and then the governor has to have that one signature on that piece of legislation. If you exclude people from coming to the table, you won't be able to get the votes to get something passed. It's a challenge. And sometimes, especially for gun safety, because I'm a huge gun safety advocate. And, the fact that Illinois has been able to ban assault rifles.
Right.
I would love to have the industry be more responsible. But you've got to make sure that we could get the votes to get it over.
Yeah.
And get that
No,
signature.
absolutely. So moving on, and this is an issue that I've been kind of hammering over the last 5 months or so. There's broad concern about the influence of big money in politics, but at the same time, that's kind of just the way the system is right now. How do you think we should navigate that sort of tension, and what reforms do you see as realistic for reducing the power of major donors and corporations without putting challengers at a disadvantage?
I would love for Citizens United to be overturned because that, I think, that's a big piece of the problem.
Yeah.
When corporations all of a sudden have First Amendment rights of freedom of speech and donating to a campaign, that sets off a log roll. The problem that we have right now is campaigns in this country are very expensive. And if you cannot get your message out, nobody is going to know about your campaign. And so you have to raise the money for your campaign. I mean, best case scenario, I would love to see what some of the European countries do, where, the government gives you X amount of dollars and you have 6 weeks, go. And I think that would take a lot of the issues out of politics, and out of the expense of running that campaign.
Right. I've heard so many different ideas of how to get it done. I always think it's so interesting because everyone I talk to, the solution is different. Like, some people say we need voter dollars, which is what they have in, I think, Seattle, where the government sends you $100 debit card and you can choose to give the dollars to campaigns that are run in that city. Then there's, another amendment to the Constitution, or there's overturning Citizens United and figuring out a way to do that. It's an issue that I think is at the forefront of so many people's minds, and it's fantastic to hear all the different ways that it can be gone about to get something to change.
Absolutely. We just have to sit down and do it and get enough people who are dedicated to the issue to get it done. And I think we can.
Right. Well, that's what I've been thinking about, is that this is not an issue that, as far as I have been aware, has been at the forefront and talked about as much as this cycle. And I think part of that is because of Donald Trump and Elon Musk and just the blatant throwing of millions and millions and millions of dollars into that campaign that I think if there's any year or election cycle for it to get done, it very well might be this upcoming one in 2026.
That would be great. That's like I said, and I agree with you. There are a lot of good ideas out there. And how do we accomplish it? How do we get it done?
Right. So we've seen the courts, especially the Supreme Court, shape national policy on issues like reproductive rights. Do you think the Constitution, as it's currently interpreted, still protects modern Americans, or are we at the point where reforming our institutions may be a necessity?
So the Constitution is something very near and dear to my heart. Before I got into elected office, I taught in the political science department at Northeastern Illinois University, and I taught a study of the Constitution. And right now, it's very disheartening because I truly believe in the Constitution and I feel like it's being stepped on. And this administration.
Really? You don't say. Are you sure?
Yeah, there's not many things you can be totally sure about. This I'm sure about. So this, I mean, it's heartbreaking. The Constitution to me is a living, breathing document. And when it was written, it was subject to interpretation. So with that interpretation, you didn't necessarily have to change the words in the document. You would just have to change the way it's interpreted to fit the needs of the time. That being said, there are a lot of things that I'd like to be changed, and that's how you do it, is through the amendment process. I've got a great story when it comes to the amendment process. So about, how many years ago was it? Was it 7, 8 years ago in Illinois, we passed the Equal Rights Amendment through the Illinois House. And this was when I served in the House, because I was in the House for 6 years before I came over to the Senate. And when I have 2 boys, now 2 men, because they're both in their 20s. When I told the kids that this was on the docket, they couldn't believe that we were still talking about equal rights. Here they had, 2 parents who were educated and professional, and they thought everybody has equal rights,
Right.
because in our community, it doesn't matter if you're male or female, you take upon that role. We have men who are stay-at-home parents where the women go and work, and vice versa. So to my kids, this was a shocker that we had to get the ERA through Illinois. One of my proudest moments was when I was in Springfield. My oldest son was on the floor with me when the Equal Rights Amendment was called. And he got to see his mom speak on the floor about why this was so important and watch it get passed. And to me, because I raised my boys, now men, to respect women and to show them that we have equality. And he actually got to see that, take place, see that part of history. So that was really something that, that's an experience I will never forget. I'm hoping he does not forget that either. But again, it's something that when the Constitution was written, things were different. And now society has just changed quite a bit. And how do we interpret the Constitution to keep up with society? And you could look at that with any of the amendments. The right to bear arms was very different than it is today.
Right. Yeah, that is one of the right to bear arms is the one that I find the most infuriating, because back in 1776, they could have never imagined the type of weaponry that we have now. Not in their wildest dreams would they have been able to even think of what an assault rifle is. And it really grinds my gears when people are like, well, the right to bear arms, I'm like, that is not what they meant. I'm sorry, but not to speak for the founding fathers, but that's not what they meant.
Yeah, exactly. And you think about it, during the Boston Massacre, 5 people were killed in the Boston Massacre, and we called it a massacre.
Right.
How many people get killed in this country every day because of gun violence?
Absolutely. Right.
And I mean, when it comes to guns too, as the chair of the mental health committee, you are much more likely to die by suicide if you have access to a weapon,
Hmm.
because once you pull the trigger, it's over.
Right. Absolutely. So let's start with some closing questions now that we're through the kind of doom and gloom policy portion. It gets a little dark in there. We got to lighten it up before we go. You are in a very crowded and competitive race. What do you feel sets you apart from others running, not just in policy, but in approach and leadership style?
So I can't comment on many of my opponents' approach to legislation because many of them don't have any legislative experience. What I will tell you is, for me, I have an open door policy. I listen to people who agree with me and people who don't agree with me. I think it's important to know what's going on both sides. And that way you could really, A, open your mind and learn, and B, get something done that's going to help people. Nobody in this race has the experience that I do. I have been named the Legislator of the Year by countless organizations, most recently the Women's Bar Association, mental health groups, disability groups, environmental groups. And you're not named Legislator of the Year if you're not getting the job done. And I think what was really interesting too is last month there was an independent study that came out by Vanderbilt University, and I believe Virginia Tech partnered with them. And it looked at the effectiveness of state legislators. And in the Illinois Senate, I was named the second most effective legislator, only second to our Senate president. So to me, that tells me that people are noticing that I am not afraid to dive deep into a difficult subject and keep swimming and swimming until I can figure out the solution and get the job done. And I am a workhorse. I'm not a show horse. I'm in it to make people's lives better because I think that's the importance of government.
Right. What I will say is that I knew who you were before you launched into the race. So when you launched yourself into the race, I said, oh, I know her. So that to me means you were doing something right, because that's kind of how I
Thank you.
judge. That is kind of how I judge, like, when people enter races. Like, if I recognize their name, I'm like, they have something like behind them. Like, I don't have a reason to, know other. At the time, I didn't grow up in Glenview. You were not my state senator. You were not my state representative. So
Or state senator.
right, or state senator. So I had no reason to know you were. So when you launched into the race, I was like, wait, I know that one. It's a good
Thank you.
thing.
Well, I appreciate that. And I think part of the best part of my job is I could be like walking in a grocery store and someone will come up to me and tell me how a piece of legislation that I passed has had a positive impact on their lives or the lives of their family members. And again, that's what government is about. How do you improve the lives of others?
Right.
And that has been my driving force throughout my legislative career. And that's the driving force I want to bring with me to Washington.
Right. Absolutely. I think the biggest, I don't even know the adjective I want to use, disservice, I guess, is that people don't pay attention to state level politics. But like you said, you have people approaching you at the grocery store. That means that they are paying attention to their state level politics. And it is so important. The biggest change is happening at the state level. Getting involved and knowing your state representatives and state senators is so important. And many of them are like you. They want to listen. They want to help out. If they run for higher office, chances are they're going to be the same exact person that they were when they were at the state level.
And something else, too, that I want to point out that I think is so important is not only do we legislate, being a legislator, but our offices and our home districts are there for constituent services. So, we will get calls from people all over the district saying, I'm having such an issue with X, Y, and Z at the state, and we'll take it from there. And we will get the job done to make sure that we find a goal or we fix the problem, whatever that problem might be, if it's within our scope that we can get it done. And I always find it the funniest when well, not funny, because sometimes people would be like, I'm at the end of my rope and somebody suggested I call you and I don't know what you can do. I've been working on this for months. And within 2 days, we've got the problem solved.
Well, that's the fun. I was going to say that people don't know that like their state
Mhm.
senators, state representatives, that their federal senators and congresspeople have the ability to like help them with these things. Like when people will say things, I'll always say, well, just like call your senator. And they're like, oh, I can do that. I'm like, yeah. What did you
Absolutely.
think they were there for? Like, I mean, no offense, but like, I'm pretty sure it's in the job description when you run that you got to help a little bit.
Absolutely. And I think what's special about our area is all the electeds in the area work together. So if somebody calls my office and I'm like, it's a federal issue, I'll connect you with your federal office. Or
Right.
if it's a county issue, I'll connect you with the county office. And so it's really like one-stop shopping. And we really
Right.
work well together to get it done.
Right. So at the heart of your story is a belief in systems that are working for people instead of against them. When you look at Washington today, even though it can look kind of a little messed up looking from the outside looking in, what gives you hope that those systems can be rebuilt and that progress is still possible?
I am, like I said before, I'm a true believer in our Constitution and the fact that we have 3 co-equal branches of government. We need to make sure that we have accountability for those who violate it. When I was first elected in the state of Illinois, gosh, more than 13 years ago, people said to me, Laura, why are you doing this? Illinois is a mess. And when I first came into the legislature, we were a mess. I mean, we had, backloads of unpaid bills. We were not paying things on time. We were, our budget was crumbling. And I said, something, I want to get in there and be part of the solution. And I am so proud to be from Illinois because now we've had, in the past 7 years, 12 financial upgrades. We have a rainy day fund. Women have rights. We have some of the strongest mental health and healthcare laws. We have some of the strongest environmental laws in place. And I'm very proud because I was part of that solution. And I want to take that with me to Washington. We're in a bad place right now, but that doesn't mean we can't make it better.
Right, absolutely. One more softball question for you. This might be the toughest one
Okay.
yet. It might be hard. Prepare yourself. What is your favorite restaurant or go-to restaurant in the Ninth District?
Oh my gosh. That is really hard because it depends on what I feel like eating.
Okay.
I mean, I have my favorite Thai food restaurant, which is
Okay.
probably Thai Inbox. Um, gosh, favorite pizza restaurants. I mean, we're Illuminati's family,
Okay. Classic
you know.
response.
I think go on and on. Favorite celebration restaurant would be Wildfire. I mean, I can't
Oh,
pick a favorite. And you're asking me which child do I love the most, my oldest or my youngest?
it's always so interesting to hear what people's responses, especially in talking to the Ninth District candidates because I live here. I for me, when you're telling me, I'm like, let me take those as recommendations. But I love hearing from people that don't live in this district talk about their favorite restaurants. They give some great answers.
Oh my gosh.
But
So
I
what's
like the
your favorite
Illuminati's
restaurant?
answers.
Okay. Okay.
Ooh, I have to go back to local. I was raised in Park Ridge. This might be a bit of nepotism because the owner is like one of my best friend's fathers, but the food is fantastic. Harp and Fiddle in Park Ridge, one of my go-to restaurants.
Okay.
Or more in the fast food category, Dengio's right on
Oh,
Willow.
yeah.
You know it. I know you
Oh,
do.
I know it. Probably seen you there before.
Exactly.
Can you tell I'm
Those
not
are
much of a cook?
those are my like go-tos in the district.
Yeah, I was okay. Can I ask you another one?
Mm-hmm.
Favorite go-to place for dessert or ice cream?
They just opened a Kilwins in Park Ridge. It's typically Kilwins, but I can
Nice.
get down with an Oberweis if
Okay.
and only if they have my peanut butter sundae in stock, because
That
oftentimes they don't have it in stock.
Okay. Which would be awful. Have you gone to the Dairy Bar in Glenview?
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay.
Please. Of course I have gone to the Dairy Bar in Glenview.
You have to go to the Dairy Bar, watch the trains, have it melt all over in the summer.
I think I'm, you forget I was not raised here. I hope I'm past the age of ice cream just melting down my hand as I stand there and don't eat it, but we'll see.
You know, ice cream brings out the kid in all of us.
Right, absolutely. All right, Laura, well, that is all I have for you. Is there anything else that you feel like I might have missed?
No, I think you touched on it all. Thank you so much for doing this.
Of course.
This has been a lot of fun.
Of course. And if people would like to donate to you, I will have your website linked in my bio. If they want to read more about you, they can also go there. I'll have your social media there. And
oh, that's great.
People can connect with you that way. And
that's great. I mean, like you said earlier, this is a crowded field. And
you should have seen me the first time I finally got a look at all the people running. I was like, what the hell? There were so many names, and I was like, I don't know where to start. The only name I recognized was yours. I literally don't know who the rest of these people are.
Oh my God. And there's only 2 people running for my state Senate seat.
Yeah.
That boggles my mind, because that's just a great place to really learn how the system works and get your feet wet. It's, we'll see. It's like I say, it's a crowded field. I feel like I've got the best grasp of the district and the most experience. And, hopefully the voters will feel the same way and we'll get the job done.
Perfect. And if you are registered to vote in Illinois, don't forget that the primary is March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. Don't forget to fill out your ballot and all that fun stuff. Yeah, Laura, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Paige. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I want to give a little bit of a disclaimer to listeners. This interview was recorded in November. As more information has come out since then, I want to be clear that this episode is not an endorsement. I am airing it now to honor the time and trust Laura Fine gave in sitting down for this conversation, and also to honor my own word about when this episode would come out. I also want to be transparent that I have serious concerns about the influence of Trump-aligned MAGA and AIPAC-affiliated donors in her campaign. Those concerns remain, and I will continue to speak openly and critically about the role of outside money in our politics, including in races that I cover on this show. The goal of Current Affairs Unfiltered is to provide context, not endorsements, and to hold power accountable while still engaging directly with candidates and elected officials. With that said, I hope you find this conversation informative and thought-provoking, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of Current Affairs Unfiltered. I really hope you guys enjoyed that last little Illinois candidate episode. I had met Laura a couple times previously while I was working with a harm reduction nonprofit in Illinois, and she's always been just very driven, very willing to listen, and it's something very, very admirable about her. Anybody that has met her has always said that she's a gunner. She's gonna get what she needs to do done. Yeah, so if you are living in Illinois, we have a primary coming up on March 17th. Be sure to check if you are registered to vote. I will have a link to do that in the show notes. Be sure to check your districts. I will have a link to figure that out as well, where you can just put your address in and figure out what districts that you live in and what you will need to be voting on. I have tons of episodes with candidates that are running in Illinois, including Kevin Ryan in the U.S. Senate race, Matt Conroy in Illinois 5, Dylan Blaha in Illinois 13, and then, of course, Laura Fine, Sam Pullen, Bushra Amiwala, and Phil Andrew in Illinois 9. So if you need to go back and listen to those in order to maybe make sure that you are going to be casting your vote the way that you would like to, feel free to do that. And yeah, I'm sure we will be back and talking about these races in the coming weeks. And so yeah, in the next couple of weeks, we'll have candidates from other states that have normal primary schedules, where their primaries are in the late spring or early summer. And yeah, if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to follow, leave a review, or share it with someone who could use this information. To support this podcast, you can also subscribe to my Substack, She Knows the Score, which is linked in the show notes. And as always, if you have questions, topic suggestions, or just want to say hi, you can find me on social media at Current Affairs Unfiltered Pod on Instagram, or send me an email at currentaffairs.unfilteredpod@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. Keep asking questions, stay engaged, and don't forget to research what life was like before the Affordable Care Act. I will see you guys next week.